sought to intentionally make subversive and highly offensive art, kind of like a spiritual sibling to Weimar Germany. And few things are more immediately offensive to the average person than the combination of targeted. This woman was not long lived whatsoever, coming under heavy scrutiny by the government and society at large. But much like the other great-granddaddy of Henry, Arrow's influence has persisted ever since. And just to put into perspective how influential this woman was, he cites its foundational influence on the development of this. By 1936, however, the war had been heating up and fewer resources available for creative pursuits. The right off his body and carried it around with her in her kimono as a keepsake. Artists and society at large was captivated by this. A final way in literature immortalizing her story. But between the war effort and the moral panic about hot women coming to meet you, the movement lost momentum. To bring this back to the endless career, the voyeuristic quality of the image was perspective where we seen this from. Still have her chest. Why she posed in such a way as to make fully visible the extent of all her injuries. And why does she still nevertheless have the cuteness and polish of a generic anime? Put all together, these are pretty direct tells that this art is not just for art's sake, it's fulfilling a very particular function. And knowing all this, the only thing truly left unanswered is what is the appeal of this fetish for people who like it? While my aim here is never to pass judgment, I strongly believe that not all fetishes are created equal. And something whose premise is so violent and probably warrants as this Redditor explains, this kept in the realm of fantasy. Like many fetishes in real life, this stuff is completely unarousing. But here, it's unrealistic, and no real people actually get hurt. There's a divide between fiction and reality. The extreme of logical exception. Now, it could be that some wires got crossed in our we don't have a reason exactly for enjoying it. It could be that we got desensitized to regular stuff and turned to more extreme stuff because we couldn't use the normal stuff. And as many point out, it can be a scary but controlled way to approach trauma. I'm not personally convinced that this kind of weird loving reverence explains the average Gurotron user, but at the end of the day, the brain is a fascinating place. And whose brain could be more useful when it comes to explaining all of this than that of the artist himself? So to come way back to the limbless hospital girl, let's remember that this was a sequel artwork to a piece that was actually uploaded a few months prior in July of 2009. And for the sake of brevity, the original artwork takes the perspective of really as he sits across the table from a girl who at this point resembles a raw skirt state. And this same girl is the one pictured recovering in the hospital. And what's almost wrong is that aesthetically it's actually pretty ugly. On his old blog, he wrote, consider this one of the most horrible scenes I've ever drawn. Why some sicko would send taunting letters to Zodiac. Scans of his letters always give me creeps. I received a novel called Suichi, in which the harm went even further by sending tape recordings and parts of the victim to her sister. Maybe that's the reason this site a few nights ago. The very next conscious thought I gotta track this down. While it's not clear how much fulfillment Zenith gets from creating these artworks, it's pretty clear that he's interested in exploring suffering from the perspective of the aggressor and the victim. And while it will be fascinating to get his insight onto the hospital girl as a meme, his last online activity was an illustration uploaded in 2020. He left behind a sizable gallery of incredible, though very explicit artwork, and his digital footprint is otherwise not known. The only real speculation can be found in this comment, suggesting that his deteriorating health led to his absence. But to be clear, nobody knows. The limbless anime world is one of the best examples we have of what happens when film art reaches a completely unexpected audience and gets taken fully out of context. She was intense and grim, juxtaposed to express very real feelings in the vast majority of fetish art that gets removed from context and put into memes. Many people were able to look at this and immediately expect to see finished every time. And I cannot end this video on this week because I genuinely think that making fun of someone who lost all 4 arms and legs sucks. This has been Bad Art History. Ever been wildly inconvenienced, maybe been forced to eat without YouTube or had to use the bathroom just as you were falling asleep? Then you can probably relate to this anime girl whose arms, legs, teeth, and eyes were torn from her body. In 2009, an artist took up the task of drawing anime girls in the most horrific scenarios he could possibly dream up. Contributing to a disturbing online community whose roots go back to pre-war Japan. A foolish subcategory responsible for tens of thousands of images of anime broads being torn to shreds for adult purposes. So how could there possibly be an audience for this stuff? Who is commissioning it? And what's the actual story behind this? This is a case of girls born in anime. This is the bizarre origin of the limbless anime girl. Today's Bad Art History, the quadriplegic anime girl from 2009, old people who get it on, and the weird underbelly of Japanese cartoons. Before we begin, I have launched a Patreon for the low price of $1 to $5 a month. You get uncensored videos, extended commentary, blooper reels, and a shout out if you want it. Thank you so much to anyone who decides to join. Thank you regardless for watching. Why does this illustration exist? And why is she fucked up? The real answer to that question actually comes from the underground art scene in 1930s Tokyo. But before we can even touch that, a quick timeline. Digital artists secretly uploaded this artwork to the Japanese image board who would probably jump out of sheer despair radiating off this image. Even the website itself has a tag as so impressive, and the comments reflect this, speculating on what, if anything, could be done to give this girl some semblance of a normal life. But what you don't know is that this is actually a part 2 to a previous illustration in which she is taken and arranged and kept. We'll come back to that later. Trust me. Long and short of it is that this anime girl has been separated from her eyes, ears, teeth, mouth, and lips. And as the artist explains, a while ago there was a local girl who was hit by a truck and ended up losing both her legs and one arm. Visiting victims with this kind of injuries would be pretty awkward, since my cynical self thinks that telling her get well soon to draw a pic of quite some time. The last pic inspired me to draw this as a continuation. I kid myself that I used a pool of blood in the last picture. That's why this one is so clean. But in spite of its shocking its obscurity on the Japanese internet, only appearing on several small blogs before it made its first real mark on SafeGuru. SafeGuru is one of numerous guru-type sites whose stated purpose is only to repost the safe for work images of and just to be clear, SafeGuru had no business reposting this particular image, but a repost they did. And in 2014, the limbless anime girl finally made her first appearance on the English web via 4chan. Interestingly, her very first appearance resembles the current meme, with an add-on joking that waiting for a game to come out made him feel like he was languishing like the girl in the photo. And then, 2019, a Twitter user posts this image with the caption, "Went through 7 pages of a Don Boru thick chart account just to find this pic in high quality." And keep in mind that this person could immediately tell that this was from the chart. The limbless anime girl exploded in popularity, circulating as a reaction image and soaring to new heights in 2022, when Instagram user Intellectual Incel Group posted the first known variation of today's meme. hardly have to explain the rest. The desperately sad nature of the image versus the minor inconvenience in the caption made for excellent shitposting material. And with the advent of AI, there's even a version where she gets her legs back. And that's all fine. The meme itself is hardly the most interesting part of this story, because that's where the common knowledge about it ends. And I'm sure what you're still wondering is, okay, but like, why was this made? It's his personal reasons, but really think about it, right? Why would an artist invest so much time and skill into mutilating a helpless animator? More to the point, why is it so obvious to so many that this is short? Before we can get into any of the truly freaky stuff, I threw quite a few words at you, so let's define them now. What are boards? The word itself comes from the Japanese pronunciation of the word board, as in image board. Donboru, launched in 2005, is among the most well-known Japanese image boards, with close to millions of art submissions, many of which are extremely explicit. And since making its source code publicly available, dozens if not hundreds of copycat boru sites with their own theme and specific audience. Have you ever heard a seemingly innocent phrase that you just knew meant something evil? Maybe Top Girl, or Lemon Party, or the furry cheese grater? Then you may just be convicted of the darkest image in furry history. In 2007, one artist posed the question that would change the world. What would happen if you put a cheese grater inside your own blood? The answer resulted in only survives through word of mouth, and any links to it are quickly deleted. But why? How bad could it possibly have been? And how did the artist that made it effectively ruin on the internet? This is the mystifying lore of the furry cheese grater. Today's bad art history of furries, foxholes, and Nancy Pelosi. It all begins in 2007. YouTube is barely in its infancy. The first iPhone hits the market, and Nancy Nation is only getting started. But in a lesser known, poorly understood furry community, and all their hard mainstream acceptance would be utterly destroyed on April 20th, 2007. That day, for seemingly no reason at all, website E62 it's the fetish art that will left in rather plain digital illustration of a ferret, fox, raccoon-looking creature upside down, crying and bleeding, with an unknown third party rapidly removing a cheese grater from between his legs. The comments exploded with hatred and ironic worship, because one thing was perfectly clear. Nobody liked this. But problems were already beginning to form. While dozens of users begged for the image to be taken down, since it was not only hurting their eyes, but their reputations, the original uploader was an admin, so he didn't have to listen to anybody. And he didn't. And while this could have just quietly lived and died on this one website, beneath anyone's notice, several users had immediately saved the image and started posting it where it really didn't belong. A quick detour to 2005. Dragoneer, known also as Jean-Paul Pichet, joins a relatively new website called Fur Affinity. After falling in love with the community, Dragoneer would take ownership of the site just 2 years later. Together with artist K9, Dragoneer came up with Fender, a ferret-fox hybrid, Fur Affinity's new official mascot and soon-to-be victim of a kitchen appliance. So by the time the faded artwork had been uploaded, Fur Affinity was one of the most recognizable faces of furries online. And though it may have set out to just be a regular art site, it was almost immediately overwhelmed with tons of porn. The furry optics sucked. But you may be asking, this was 2007. Shop Media was huge back then. It took virtually no effort to find everything from mutilating people to losing their own pets. And other than the obvious, what made this drawing that bad? It's not real. There's stuff out there. And there was. But here's why that didn't really matter. Quick internet history. If you don't know, Encyclopedia Dramatica, ED for short, was a satirical Wikipedia-style website with articles about every aspect of internet culture. It exists, but it goes down constantly. And like 4chan, being featured on this website in any capacity was very bad news for you. For obvious reasons, the cheese grater image was prominently displayed on articles about furry activities and online sex weirdos. Rumors exaggerating the content of the image were living legend that was monstrous compared to the actual thing. So this just wasn't adding up. This was not the worst furry artwork by either mind. So why the hype? To answer that, we have to travel one year back. Shock images need no introduction, and I'm not giving you the deep dive. But it's important to understand that furries, regardless of what you may personally believe about them, use the internet much like anyone else. So it only follows that furries would have their own universe. Shock image. And to briefly go over the more infamous ones, in no particular order, Sandy Core, Spyro Subway, Two Babies, One Fox, also known as Fashtails, Cars, the Tony Pasta, a bizarre story of black comedy. Horses. After between these, cheese grater, it's mostly fetish. There's no shortage of fetish art on the internet. The artwork thing you see in memes is usually the stuff that avoids immediate watch. Inflation, transformation, the Wonder Bread guy, and much like the goat of all shock images, the cheese grater hits several emotional highs at the same time. It's gory, it's gay, it's furry, it's deeply entrenched in the subculture, and it was potentially many people's first involuntary exposure. In 11 years, the cheese grater image stuck, becoming the single most downloaded furry art of all time. Just to put this in perspective for you, E621 posted 1.5 million images of furries putting things inside their ass. When this happened, people made fan art. The word cheese grater was its own meme now, thanks in part to a copy pasta so disgusting that if I read it to you, my channel will be deleted. But that backstory, much like the mythos surrounding this drawing, was just made up by a random person. But between the image itself, the shaky reputation of the community, and the borderline obsession people on 4chan and Encyclopedia Dramatica had with dominating lore of the internet, the cheese grater was simply too good to pass up. Cringe culture would even be relevant for another 10 years, but there was absolutely a growing appetite for pointing and laughing, especially at furries. You said, how could I point and laugh at anything on my wrist? Luckily for us, today's video has been kind of sponsored by Holzkern. Holzkern is an Austrian-based women specializing in pieces as unique as you are. Each watch is one of a kind. So what this is going no finish, it's definitely thriving. Second, while extremely poorly documented, there happens notable instances of cheese-related freak phenomena. In 2013, a very normal DeviantArt user, likely inspired by the cheese grater image, wrote a fanfiction about real things of Dan and Phil using a cheese grater to create bacon. Bits out of Phil's call. In 2014, a Philadelphia man labeled the Swiss cheese pervert pled guilty to indecent exposure after he was caught approaching random women with a slice of cheese and asking them if they wanted to watch him rub it on himself. What did he mean by this? In 2018, a German man was found covered in cheese and dead inside of a pie. Was wrong with an autoerotic accident. What few blogs exist about cheese and or cheese grater? Luckily for us, today's video has been kindly sponsored by musket. Musket is an Austrian-based watch and jewelry brand for women specializing in pieces that is unique. As you are, each watch is one of a kind because it's made from natural materials such as wood, stone, and my favorite, pearl. I'm always looking for new functional accessories to add to my look, and my watch is not only super cute, but the watch face is made with FSC certified wood, so I can look good and feel good knowing that this helps fight deforestation. I'm also As unique as you are. Each watch is one of a kind because it's made from natural materials such as wood, stone, and iron. I'm always looking for functional accessories to add to my life. My watch is not only smart, but the watch face is made with FSC certified wood, so I can look good and feel good knowing that this helps fight deforestation. I'm also in love with their elevated rose gold watch with ceramic and gel remover. I've gotten a billion compliments on this one. It is super iridescent in the light, and it's incredibly sturdy and waterproof. Pulse Current offers a huge variety of styles, so you can dress your look up and down. And best of all, this watch, like all Pulse Current products, was made in a small quality tested batch, which means it's built to last. Whether you're looking for a watch for daily use or for date night, Pulse Current is your cover. And right now, you can go to pulsecurrent.com/Scumbagovich and use my code SCUM to get 10% off your purchase. Thank you so much to Holz Current for sponsoring this video and doing the show. How exactly is this century? Calling this a fetish is a tall order when there's so much edgy art for edge's sake. So first up, blood, humiliation, and disfigurement largely fall under the umbrella of which is an adult fascination with gore and mutilation. As of filming, E621 posts no fewer than 14,000 images tagging his girl. So while this is by no means a popular fetish, it's definitely thriving. Second, while extremely poorly documented, there have been several notable instances of cheese-related freak phenomena. In 2013, the cheese grater image wrote a fan fiction about real-life YouTube duo using a cheese grater to create naked In 2014, a Philadelphia man labeled the Swiss cheese pervert pled guilty to indecent exposure after he was caught approaching random women with a slice of cheese and asking them if they wanted to watch him vomit on himself. What did he mean by this? In 2018, a German man was found covered in cheese and dead inside of a plastic bag. He was ruled an autoerotic accident. And beyond that, what few blogs exist about cheese and cheese grater fetishes tend to either be totally salads or completely inaccurate. R/case of sexuals is without content. The only relevant articles about a cheese fetish clearly delineates that it is simply too obscure. Let's not kid ourselves here. This has very little to do with cheese and very much to do with the prevalence of shock jock behavior in the late 2000s and early 2010s internet. Most likely, the appeal of this image for people who truly get off to this stuff is the use of a dangerous object in such an intimate, humiliating, and painful way. Which brings us back again to E621. 4chan. While E621 is no stranger to some pretty extreme content, it does come down hard on those who break the rules. Entire fetish categories and specific users have been blacklisted from the site, much less. And up until 2006, 4chan and 7chan, to a much lesser extent, were more than willing to host the content that E621 considered too far. Although, fun fact, there was a period of time where users on 4chan were so fed up with furry posting that they kept spamming threads with images of trains until the furries fled to 7chan, among other reasons. The cheese grater, essentially, was a perfectly engineered shock image. Unsuspecting, known by one seemingly innocuous word, largely unknown outside the furry fandom, and frightening enough for furries without crossing over into real-life gore or illegal imagery. So with all this said, where the hell did it go? In 2018, over a decade after the original upload, artist CV successfully filed a takedown claim and finally got the image nuked for good. But this wasn't without consequence. CV's reputation had been significantly damaged, inextricably linked to this one horror. And whether it was due to blowback or through personal choice, CV removed virtually all of their artwork from the internet and vanished without much of a trace. And the uploader of the post that started it all, Arcturus, had suffered so much unrelated controversy in the following years that he, too, was eventually banned off the site. And it is kind of fucked up that Arcturus refused to take the image down, even though it wasn't his to post, for as long as he did. But somewhat unsurprisingly, the takedown didn't make the cheese grater any less relevant. And no sooner was the original post gone than dozens of reposts on various subreddits and image boards sprang up in its place. Fender, the Fur Affinity mascot, doesn't seem to have been permanently traumatized from this experience. Although I suspect that many furries, Dragoneer included, may have taken issue with such a depiction. And on a separate note, as for Dragoneer, his lifetime commitment to the furry world actually recently came to an end due to his undone passing. And while Fender wasn't his most important contribution, it was undoubtedly iconic. And unfortunately, this is basically everything we know. In spite of the massive, bloody internet footprint of this image, very little documentation remains. The idea of a ferret fox raccoon with a cheese grater wedged up his rear ended up being a significantly improved in spite of decades of controversy. This one included this combination. There have been very few developments in CV's or Arcturus settings, which is just as well, because deadass, this time has been bad artists. Thanks again to those current responsible this was documented compared to anything I've ever looked up for something this influential, and it did not. There's so little mouth. Thing is word of mouth, the research is word of mouth. It's crazy. Thank you so much to Canada Cat for his gracious research assistance, and thank you, as always, to the patrons for making this possible. In 2018, over a decade after the original upload, artist CB successfully filed a takedown claim and finally got the image nuked for good. But this wasn't without consequence. CB's reputation had been significantly damaged, inextricably linked to this one artwork. And whether it was due to blowback or through personal choice, CB removed virtually all of their artwork from the internet and vanished without much of a trace. And the uploader of the post that started it all, an admin named Arcturus, had suffered so much unrelated controversy in the following years that he too was eventually banned off the site. And it is kind of fucked up that Arcturus refused to take the image down, even though it wasn't his to post, for as long as he did. But somewhat unsurprisingly, the takedown didn't make the cheese grater any less relevant, and no sooner was the original post gone than dozens of free posts on various subreddits and image boards sprang up in its place. Fender, the Furfinity mascot, doesn't seem to have been permanently traumatized from this experience. Although I suspect that many furries, Dragoneer included, may have taken issue with such a depiction. And on a separate note, as for Dragoneer, his lifetime commitment to the furry world actually recently came to an end due to his untimely passing. And while Fender was his most important contribution, it was undoubtedly iconic. And unfortunately, this is basically everything we know. In spite of the massive, bloody internet footprint of this image, very little documentation remains. The idea of a ferret-box raccoon with a cheese grater wedged up his rear ended up being 1,000 times more mimetic than the drawing could ever be, which is usually how these things go. Although furries today are by no means mainstream, their online reputation has significantly improved in spite of decades of controversy, this one included. And as for the posters who gifted us this abomination, there have been very few developments in CB's or Arcturus' sense, which is just as well, because deadass, this topic has been incredibly grating. This has been Bad Art History. Thanks again to Holz Current for sponsoring today's video. Make sure to use my link and go to holzcurrent.com/scumbagovich and use code SCUM to get 10% off your purchase store-wide. Apologies for what is probably a much shorter video this week. This was like relatively poorly documented compared to anything I've ever looked up. You would think for something this influential it would have like requisite documentation, and it did not. There's so little information on this. It's literally word of mouth. The thing is word of mouth, research is word of mouth. It's gorgeous. Thank you so much to Canada Cat for his gracious research assistance, and thank you, as always, to the patrons for making this possible. My sincerest appreciation to Inspector Good, DS Please, Kyle, Matt Voltron, Maxie, Harry, Scoop, Sloth 3D, and Trevor Savage. And to Scum Babies, Acidic, Alice, Alexander First, Angel Perez Calzada, Leonardo Susanna Houses, Bacon, Cat, 20th Corn, Maya, Ezra Lara, Professor 570, Victor Valenzuela, Huds, Insane Freak, Jake McGuckin, Jasper, Joshua DA, K-Hug, Fulmer Bird, Crackin' Jokes, Chris, Literally Dead Inside, Max Check, Nation, Floor, and me, Bob. ถูกกังวลที่เที่ยวกังวลจริงคือโซลินบูสเตอร์เซรั่มกันครอบคลุมมันป้าแดงคือผมย้ำว่า straight ahead if you dare trust me. As of filming, E621 posts no fewer than 14,000 images tagged as gore. So while this is by no means a popular fetish, it's definitely thriving. Second, while extremely poorly documented, there have been several notable instances of cheese-related